Hi, all. Welcome back to another episode. Hope you're all having an amazing day today. Today, we are going to look at how to build a PRD for generative AI features, right? So, if you look at the traditional PRD, there are certain components to it, right? But when it comes to a generative AI feature, what is different, right? What all things you should think through while you're building generative AI PRD is what I'm going to run you through today. So I'm going to run you through section by section, each parts, and also give you idea in terms of what all things you should really focus on when it comes to writing a PRD for a generative AI feature. This would be super insightful for you if you are an AI PM who's trying to build AI, generative AI features and wanted to look at all aspects while you're building through this, right? So jumping straight into the video. So the process I'm going to follow today is I'm going to take you through a mind map where I'm going to break down the different aspects you need to think through while you are actually building a PRD, right? So let me start with an overview, right? The first thing is when you think about AI PRD, right? There are certain skills, right? We should look at, right? Basically, the AI PRD comprises of three aspects that you kind of really look into. First one is how well you define the problem is very important when it comes to writing a good PRD. Second is how do you address the solution? Again, something same as the traditional old PRD. And how do you mitigate risk? Right. So the same sections are relevant here as well, but there are more things that you need to look at when you are uh, really writing down a good PRD, right? So this is the first aspect, right? A few nuances to consider when it comes to an AI PRD is the first thing is when it comes to a generative AI, right? If you look at a traditional feature, right, it's basically a zero or one, right? So when you give an input, there is a fixed output, right? When it comes to a traditional AI feature, I mean like a traditional feature that you're developing, but when it comes to LLM, the output is non-deterministic. What I mean is basically it ranges from 0 to 100, like a value between, right? So 99% accuracy, 88% accuracy, whatever it is, right? Second important thing you need to look at is the user's interaction with the feature changes its outcome, right? So it's not again binary. How people interact with the feature changes its outcome. So you need to be very cautious while you're designing the whole inputting system. Third is the model technique choice impact research, right? Like what kind of model that you choose in order to deliver that feature, right? Like whether it is um, uh, like a Gemini or Chat GPT or the kind of models that power your feature is very important. And another few things to look at is again the industry was evolving fast, so the model evolution is something you need to keep in mind always, right? And probably need to revisit, right? So that point needs to come into your mind while you are writing the PRD to probably go and revisit it, reiterate it, and needs to be part of your roadmap, right? Managing output quality and crafting great user experience are very important. As I said, input, how the inputs are given, based on that, the outputs will widely vary, right? So you need to be able to control that, right? So that being said, these are some of the nuances that you need to keep in mind. Apart from that, a few things that you need to also keep in mind uh, is something that I'm gonna discuss next, right? So primarily when it comes to a PRD, right, there are certain things that you need to cover in a PRD, right? uh, to write a good PRD, right, which is an AI feature PRD, these are the sections that you need to cover in it, right? So let's look at it one by one. First thing is identifying a good use case for AI, right? So typically, like there is a big trend that a lot of AI products are coming out there, and the industry is exploding, and there is a general trend that hey, like why don't you also come up with another AI feature, right? Which is why it is very important for you as a PM to really think through it. You're not building another AI feature because you want to give that feature to the user. You are trying to solve user's problem through your product, right? So that is something that you should really keep in your mind and should be very cautious while you're thinking through building any feature, right? So it should be always like, hey, there is a problem that user want to solve, and if the AI feature is gonna help in that process, then you kind of build that feature, not the other way around, right? So which is why identifying good use cases for AI is very important. We will come in and go in detail into this. Um, Articulating the problem, defining the goals, scoping the solution, aligning on technical consideration with engineering, defining the go-to-market plan, and the different other sections. I'll go deep into each of these topics. Right. So first thing first, identifying a good use case for AI, right? As I said earlier, you are not building the feature for the sake of building the feature. You're building the feature because you want to solve a problem that user faces, which is why AI as a hammer looking for a nail should not be your approach. It should be, uh, yeah, like, yeah, it should be always like you are solving a problem using AI, right? So one of the things that you should think about is always like, um, yeah, product teams explore generative AI, customers, executives inject AI into products, PS maybe handled solution first. Like let's look at this in detail, right? One of the best approaches, right, when it comes to finding a good problem to solve with AI is, uh, again, like as you think about a traditional feature, right, the best approach is always going from the user's problem, right? So first thing is build deep understanding of user needs, right? What are their problems, right? uh, um, what are the biggest pain points, kind of prioritize it, right? Understand what to delight users, right? uh, have a clear understanding of what broader problems that product solves, right? All these things are very very important when it comes to uh, deciding on what kind of features to build, right? Brainstorm how user needs improved by AI, right? So uh, basically try and brainstorm on what are the different kind of uh, AI features that could possibly help your users, right? Baseline understanding of LLMs, right? So the two-way approach, right? One is you should have a good awareness about user problems. Otherwise, you should have good awareness about the solutions as well, so that you could use the right solutions at the right place to solve the right problems, right? And then obviously, uh, the determine most valuable use cases, right? So always having a good idea about, uh, yeah, like what are the problems that would make a differentiation, right? Solve biggest pain points, product delight, right? So like, will this solving this use case with AI bring delight to the user? It solves biggest pain points. Have an idea about it, right? Whether it would create competitive mode, right? That's also something that you should be aware of. And obviously use techniques like roadmap prioritization, right? In order to come up with the best use cases for solving with AI, right? So basically, the things that we spoke now are like, how do you find good problems to solve with AI, right? Um, Let me also give you a bit of a example to give you some more context in terms of how you should go about it, right? So, for example, let's take a product like Zoom, right? Uh, like when you think about a product like Zoom, the first few things come into mind is your mind is Zoom is basically a meeting app where it helps communicate between two parties through a online solution. Right? Few of the problems that currently exist with Zoom is basically like if there is a meeting happening, the scheduling aspect of it, sharing of agenda, conducting brainstorming, takeaways, follow up, all these things are manual today. So here is one flow you could probably think about solving with AI. And probably start writing down, hey, how AI can help in these areas, right? So take each of the workflows or map the complete user journey end to end, and then look at, hey, like what are the problems that AI could solve here, right? So here in this case, scheduling can be one of them. Um, Drafting agenda can be possible. Brainstorming ideas can be possible. Extracting useful takeaways can be possible, right? So these are some of the things that you looked at through the user journeys and said that, hey, like these are some of the things that could be solved using AI, right? And then you do a kind of prioritization analysis that, hey, like if I do use this feature or implement this feature, what is the impact, right? So basically, the typical framework that you use for looking at what is the cost of implementation to what is the effort to like the rise, right? Like you would use any prioritization feature to come up with uh, deciding like what kind of feature to look at, right? So in this case, let's take an example of meeting summarization would be one of the best investments because it will really solve a pain point and also bring delight to users in the meetings, right? It becomes super easy. They can focus on them, their meetings and stuff like that, right? So, um, yeah, and few other things is also when it comes to like thinking about AI solutions or probably uh, user journeys to crack with AI, like run brainstorming sessions, hackathons internally, right? This is one approach you could use. Um, and build prototypes and all so that you come to get lot more ideas in terms of what you could solve using AI, right? So that is also very important in this process of finding what good use cases to be solved through AI, right? So this is the first step in this whole process, which is identifying the best problems, identifying the delight aspects, and then figuring out what is the best generative AI feature to use to solve that, right? Again, it's the same method used in a traditional PMing, but I just went and articulated a bit more in deep here because there are components of AI. You need to have ideas in terms of, hey, what are the kind of generative AI solutions out there which are available, which will help you to come up with the best solution. One of the things that personally I do is I kind of like daily uh, look at certain newsletters, read news in terms looking at certain uh, hot trending products out there. Try it out like once, right, end to end, right? That gives you a lot of ideas in terms of, hey, like what are we capabilities generative AIs are giving today? How can you push the limits, right? And these are all becoming your elements to come with a good solution in your product, right? The second step in this whole process is articulating the problem well, right? Um, so whenever you are thinking about articulating problem, it should be always again focused on the problem, right? Hey, what is the problem? What is the user problem? Why is it a problem? How do you know it's a problem, right? It should focus on the problem. Don't go into the solution because again, there's a high chance that you get a lot of push from the stakeholders to say that, hey, like, why don't you add this feature to this product, right? So, uh, yeah, I still remember one of the interviews where I was pushed to say that, hey, like, go and build on top of this feature, right? So, like, again, come and fall back to the fundamentals first principle. So, always start with the problem and reverse engineer it to the solution, right? Um, so, in this case, again, like, let me give you a bit of example in terms of, okay, in a Zoom AI meeting summary problem statement, what is a bad example, right? Like, let's look at a bad example, right? Users don't have an automated AI note taker for all their meetings. This is not the problem that you should start with, right? It should be always like something like, hey, users want a record of key points from the meetings, but it's tedious and distracting to take through manual notes, right? So start with the key problem, right? I'll give you a even better example here, which is like users want a record of discussion topics. Basically, when they're doing the meeting, they want a record of discussion topic. What were the key? Like it's like MOM, right? You get the MOM of the meeting, right? And you don't have to spend time on it because you don't want to get distracted while doing it, right? So you get an MOM, you get the action items, and then it is the meetings are automatically booked. The action items are sent to mail, right? All those things are done through AI, which basically frees you up and gives you delight, right? So it's a problem that it solves, right? So this is where you should start by articulating the problem well, right? Now let's look at the second part, right? Like I mean the third part of the PRD, right? Uh, Whenever you are trying to solve a problem, start with defining the goals, right? Like what do you intend to solve with this specific feature, right? Like that clarity you should have. You should also have clarity in terms of what are the non-goals, right? Also, what is the success metrics, right? So things like, hey, what users accomplish outcomes produced. Goals is non-proposed solution, right? Outline goals, non-goal success metrics. In goals, it can be like things like, let's look at, hey, right, what are the primary goals of feature? Uh, yeah, and always describe the outcomes. Non-goals should be things like, uh, yeah, what are the things that you don't want to implement, right? So set the boundaries well, right? So that you don't set wrong expectation. Set the success metrics, right? Whether it's qualitative goals, this quantitative metrics, uh, how how you know feature is successful, DAU, MAU, clicks, actions, tasks, retention, all these are indicators for your success metrics. There can be also proxy metrics, right? Because if you are not able to find the ideal metrics, right, like go for proxy metric. Proxy metrics are like metrics with this parallel to which is not directly saying it, but it gives you an indirect direction that hey, like something is going well, right? Similar to non-AI, but add quality metrics and use. So just yeah, also add quality metrics, right? Uh, this is also important again, as I said, like AI features are very non-binary. It falls under a range, so it should be important to say, hey, what is good, what is bad, right? Um, yeah, yeah, like customer impact can be again a success metrics, right? ROI and stuff like that. So let's look at one of the Zoom meeting summary feature goals, right? So then you get a clear idea about what I'm talking about, right? User reads through accurate meeting recaps, no transcript recording needed. That's one of the goals. User receives action items and owners. That's another goal. This meeting summaries provide key info. Again, another goal. Convenient access to summaries. User can edit summaries. Basic management of summary access. Right? So these are some of the goals that it gives. Non-goals are basically no customized templates for meeting types, no content from share screen chats and calendar invites, right? So it clearly defines that it's the discussion topics is what is summarized and sent across, right? So that clarity is given and that is the goal set. In the success metrics, again, you are gonna deal with the usage metrics, by percentage customers accounts enabling base setting, monthly active users of meeting summaries versus of meeting running summaries, how many people have actually used the feature, right? Um, and how many meetings have been using this feature, how many people have enabled this, right? So enabling using users using it, meetings being used, all these things are very important. Quality metrics, as I said, right? Like we'll have some mechanism to collect inputs which is related to whether it is going well or not. So the thumbs up, thumbs down can be a good symbol for you to collect the quality metrics. Mm, yeah, and some of the other things is also the time saved, right? So people are using to sign time saved as yeah, and how many time saved by not requiring a human note taker, right? So we can probably calculate it as this person's time saved or like an additional resource time saved, and it can also be um percentage of meetings where user does not attend but read summary, right? So how many meetings where the person has not even attended, right? All these are success metrics you could think about, right? So write down that clearly and define that goals. Next most important thing is scoping the solution, right? So when it comes to AI features, there are certain things that you really need to look at, right, when you go into scoping the solution, because as I said earlier, it is not deterministic, right? It's not 0 to 1. So like you should be very careful in terms of how you put the quality and stuff in place. So in the solution, things like uh, what are the user stories, right? What are the specific uh, user flows? What are the user stories within that, right? Um, right, so things like user interaction steps, action outputs, end-to-end flow, AI and non-AI steps, core interaction for the LLM component, right? Mix and match interactions, human in the loop aspects, right? So all these things need to be really thought through. Uh, Basically, end-to-end user flow, which involves the AI feature also, and AI specific functionality requirements. When it comes to AI specific functionality requirements, right? Few of the things you need to really be cautious about this. Uh, what are the kind of user inputs being given, right? Like, for example, uh, how users invokes LLM flow, right? Examples are Canva, Magic Switch, Notion Q&A, Gmail. Like you would have seen all those AI features, right? What triggers it, right? So that input flow should be very clear. Second is what is the kind of contextual data being passed to the LLM, right? For example, like along with the user input, additional data LLM considers as context. Uh, Defining data boundaries, right? Like you shouldn't allow it to add more diverse sources again, because it would have cost implication, engineering implications, right? So all these contextual data also needs to be defined. So user input contextual data is a very key thing that you need to define, right? In the AI specific functionality requirements. LLM output, right? That also should be very clearly defined, right? It's non-deterministic, as I said, cannot specify all prompts, predict responses. Guidance needed for engineering team. Describe general requirements principle, right? Length, tone, format, focus, exclusion. Example should demonstrate good. Um, yeah, so these LLM output should be very clearly written. And another very important thing when it comes to these AI PRDs are, right, like we should be able to really set the uh, evaluations clearly, right? Hey, how do you get the feedbacks, right? How do you evaluate quality, right? So for example, let's look at this, right? How do you monitor and improve quality post launch, right? Like what are the mechanisms to monitor the whole stuff, right? Um, so whether it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, right? Feedback form with scoring open text, right? All these things should be kept open, right? So that you can collect, yeah, specify data shared with feedback, user input, model output, right? So all these things needs to be thought through. Quality evaluation, right? The LLM quality never perfect, challenge to quantify, right? What convinces a stakeholder ready for it? And you should have a very clear uh, evaluation set, right? Automated evaluations, manual evaluations, mechanisms to improve quality, right? Um, so, like all these things should be really set, right? Because otherwise, again, this is very specific to AI feature, right? So that all needs to be thought through. Privacy, security, and ethical considerations is another important thing. What kind of privacy, security policies you should set, and how do you communicate with them? What are the settings and control, right? Especially when it comes to sharing this kind of data to the LLM, right? People are very cautious, right? How do you put the settings and control? People default on off kill stop feature, remove sensitive data from sources, opt in and out of data for model training, default customizable data retention period, right? All these things will be taken care. Another thing is safeguards for responsible AI, right? So, anticipating abuse, offensive content, checking for biasness, content moderation filters, change designed to limit abuse, right? All these things has to be written very clearly, right? Because otherwise, you will get into trouble, right? So, because I still remember like somebody has put this in the news, right? Saying, hey, like uh, LLM shouted at me, right? So LLM gave me a biased answer. That became a problem, right? So all these things as a PM you should really look at, right? Um, Now, finally, when it comes to um, yeah, next one is aligning on technical considerations with engineering, right? So whenever you're building these feature, right, align early and often with the engineering team. Let's like have multiple back and forth discussions even before finalizing the PRD, after finalizing PRD, right? Because it's very important for you to really understand key technologies, understand the nuances of it, right? So I remember one of the features when I was developing in Gojek, right? There was this uh, thing, right, which is like it was a payment feature, and I never thought about latency, right? Like I did think about latency, but I never put a threshold date, right? So when the final product was released, the latency had issues, right? And we had to call back the entire production feature, right? Which was again like waste of money, efforts, and stuff like that. We had to re-release it after a point of time, right? So the marketing cost got impacted, right? So small things like that matter, which is why it is important for you to have back and forth communication between the engineering team to understand the nuances of the technologies. I would say they'll collaborate on technical discussions, as I said, like at each different stages, right? And define the key components, right? Like hey, what kind of prompts needs to go to LLM, to what kind of model needs to be selected, right? What are the LLM techniques to be used, right? Whether it's RAG, fine tuning, um, and uh, yeah, so these techniques are also constantly evolving, right? And scaling needs, right? Communicate like the scaling needs, right? So these are all very important. Like I'll give you a simple example, right? Imagine you released a feature, right? And you have not thought through scaling, right? The pricing tier is not aligned to that, which means that your systems would hit like huge cost, and ultimately the business would have to bear the cost, right? So you need to think about all these aspects, and also let's say for the marketing or the hype, right? Suddenly 1,000 users is coming and hitting on your systems, right? So you should be able to kind of anticipate those scaling needs and communicate it well in advance to the engineering team. And also finally, don't overspec also, right? Like there are these are all like things that continuously evolve. So put in the boundaries and then keep evolving stuff, right? So discuss solution scope with the engineering during drafting, mini unknown about work close to understand what's achievable, right? So all these things you keep in mind, right? So I'll try to probably share this document if possible. But otherwise, I hope this gives you a clarity in terms of the whole PRD sections you need to focus on. And finally, the last one, right, which is a go-to-market plan. So any feature which is being built has to be released in the market, and it should win the market, right? So which is why ownership of the market go-to-market plan also should lie with you, right? So think things like yeah, like let's look at some of the consideration, right? Like how rollout to mitigate risk, right? Like things like how do do you do a internal testing first and then beta users, alpha users, and the mass stage rollout, right? So that process needs to be thought through. Uh, how do you like uh, price the product, right? So that is also very important. Uh, how do you enable cross-functional teams, right? Let's say you are releasing the feature, right? So you start getting questions left, right, center. There might be people who will point at you, say, hey, link, this is not working as expected, right? It might be like they have not given the right input, right? So like in LLMs that happens, right? Like the input, as I said earlier, your output depends on your input. So if you have not given the right input, which means that the output is not correct. So the user experience you have crafted, the boundaries you have set, and along with that, giving right instructions to the customer support team to help that, right? Even if you plan for everything, is also very important, right? Rollout plan, I told already, right? Um, how do you roll out things, right? LLM output non-determined with testing, start with beta program to monitor quality across, allow feedback iterations before wider launch, successive tiers depending on this urgency, right? So internal user testing first, and invite early adopters, open beta to selected customer tiers, and then you make it available to the large set of users, right? So pricing, and how do you think about pricing, right? Um, so usually when it comes to the pricing, currently people are adding it as an add-on cost because this involves a LLM cost, right? The model cost, right? So for example, for each hit that you make to the LLM, it's like per token, right? So the number of words you are being charged, right? So typically there is a cost you get from the LLMs you purchase, right? So for 1 million tokens, X amount. So it needs to tally with the pricing, right? Otherwise your business again won't be profitable, right? So you need to be able to plan for it. Also working on the pricing options, right? Uh, like how do you think about it, right? Can you give it free for all paying users? Can it be part of the free trial? And because imagine, right, somebody is using your product for like 10 days in the free trial and then like bombarding the system with lot of things and your LLM cost shoots up, right? So that becomes a problem. So, so that is also something I need to think through. Uh, and yeah, all these aspects, right, that is part of the free tier, it's not part of it, whether it's an add-on, all these things has to be thought. Uh, Cross-function enablement is something which I spoke. Yeah, and finally, like, yeah, so this is basically an example with the Zoom meeting setup. So this is it, right? So this is how you should think about the whole uh, PRD when it comes to generative AI. This I really want to stress on this aspect. This is where the major difference come in, uh, where in terms of AI specific functionality requirement is something that you should be aware of. Uh, Privacy, security, and ethical considerations. Uh, and the key point, as I told earlier, is the feature is not deterministic, right? It's not 0 to 1 output. So you should have clear evaluation, which is like, hey, like how do I measure the success of it, right? What is right? What is wrong? Till what range it can go? How do I observe it, right? What is my fallback mechanism, right? All these things has to be thought through, and that is what makes the a good KI future PRB, right? So I hope this video really adds value to your journey. I'll try to add a PRD template also to the video for you to go and refer. I hope this VB is useful. Please start using the PRD, and if there is any feedback, do share it in comments. And subscribe the channel for more videos like this, right? So we cover a lot of interesting segments, and I hope this is useful for you. Until next time, Sarin signing off.